This is TWiT.
Paul Thurrott, I, and many of those in GRC's news groups, and most of the rest of the world who have been curious, have been playing around with Windows 11 since last Tuesday, when a development release ISO image first appeared on the internet. The moment I saw that the ISO had leaked, I went searching for and found it. Links were not difficult to find. And I'm sure that they're still not today, as this has spread now even further and wider than it had a week ago. A couple of thoughtful listeners also DM'd links they had found. For the most part, the links tend to be transient, since they're being removed by the powers that be as soon as they're found. But even if I had stable links, I would be uncomfortable using this podcast to reshare them, since Windows 11 isn't officially released, and its sharing could reasonably consider promoting the use of what is essentially pirated commercial software. The fact that it's been and is being so widely pirated doesn't make it any less so. What I can do, however, is to protect our listeners. We can offer our inquisitive listeners some protection in the form of the SHA-256 hash of the known to be valid ISO file. That way, anyone here who believes they may have obtained the ISO from who knows where can readily verify its validity and safety for themselves. Being very cautious myself, last week I downloaded many of these 4.8 gigabyte apparent Win11.isos from very different sources and checked each one's SHA-256 hash. They all matched, so they were all valid. And I also confirmed that with some other hashes that others were also making. This SHA-256 hash in the show notes, I've got the whole thing there. Its first 32 bits, it starts out with B8426650. And the last 32 bits, it ends with 6DA60DCB. Those 64 bits alone, the first 32 and the last 32, provide 1 in 18.4 times 10 to the 18th verification strength. So if your hash begins and ends with those, you're okay. For anyone who's interested in making a hash, there are various Explorer shell context extensions to show the hashes of files which are right-clicked on, but Windows has two built-in commands to do the same job. There's a standard command prompt command. It turns out that the Windows certutil, CERTUTIL, has a hash file forming function. You say certutil -hash file, and then the file name, and then SHA-256. I've got this shown in the show notes also. And then PowerShell has a built-in function, and it defaults to SHA-256. It's capital GET hyphen capital file capital hash, then the file name. Hit enter. It takes a while for a 4.8 gig file, but in both cases, you'll get the hash. And I haven't seen any instances of malicious ISOs, but you got to know somebody is going to create one. So if you do go get this, and if you're curious, take the time to make sure that the hash matches the one that I've listed. And having played around with it, it is indeed Windows 11. And I have to say, it is truly gorgeous. It is very pretty. But Leo, I'm a bit disappointed because I keep encountering plenty of pointy corners.
It's supposed to be rounded.
Exactly. Now, it occurred to me that it might be that the extremely high resolution of my monitor is not being compensated for. so that the subtle visual rounding is being lost. I believe that on that machine, I have my text scaling set at least to 150 because the resolution is so high. So what that would mean is if they're rounding with a bitmap, then they're not scaling the rounding as they're scaling the text in order to, keep the effect of the rounding the same. Maybe they'll fix that. But for whatever reason, what I'm seeing still seems quite pointy in places. There are reports of Win 11 install failures on older machines. And when I heard you and Paul and Mary Jo talking about it last Wednesday, Leo, one of the reasons they were conjecturing that Microsoft may have done a Windows 11 is to promote the sale of new hardware. Yeah. It's like, hey, you want 11? Get it on this new, machine. But what's curious about that is it's certainly going to be able to upgrade over 10. So one of the things that's interesting is that Windows 11 refuses to run due to the desktop or whatever machine it's running on, but probably a desktop because laptops are better this way, not having a trusted platform module, not having TPM, and thus being unable to support Windows Secure Boot, which requires TPM. Support for Secure Boot has always been optional for Windows 10, but we have heard that, and now the industry is confirming, that for some reason Microsoft has decided to make it mandatory. That is, Windows 11 must have a trusted platform module. So that would rule out its use if it hadn't already been worked around. And maybe they'll stomp that out by the time it gets to release.
Remember, you're not using a release version. In fact, there's a lot of things missing from what you're using. We know that. So
it is a dev release. So anyone running Windows can first of all check for the presence of their hardware's platform's TPM by running a little snap-in. It's just called tpm.msc. So hit the Windows R, the Windows key and then R to open the run dialog, then enter tpm.msc and hit enter. That'll launch the TPM configuration applet. It's built into Windows. 7 has it, and I'm sure everything since does, and see whether the system agrees that it's got a TPM. That'll tell you whether that platform will eventually run Windows 11. I have links to 2 instances of web pages talking about the problems people have had last week installing Windows 11. Fossbytes.com has, is one of them. Solve TPM 2.0 error installing Windows 11 fixed. And basically it involves taking one particular file from the Windows 10 and substituting for Windows 11. Maybe Windows 11 will end up fixing that or double checking for it. Depends on how much Microsoft cares about locking this down. I don't know what their position will be. And one other really interesting thing. I'm sharing this mostly because it came from one of our own very active people in GRC's news group where he discovered this. The other potential gotcha hit people who do not wish to log in to Microsoft during the installation. And I didn't want to because, this wasn't official, right? Windows 11. I didn't want to be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to log on with my Microsoft account. No. But so you'd like to create an offline account. Although Windows 10 Pro allows for bypassing this in the setup UI, the Home Edition of Windows 11 does not. So if a Windows 11 is being installed on actual hardware containing a built-in Win 10 Home OEM key, it won't give you the option of which version of Windows 11 you want to install, as I got when I installed it on a virtual box. In a VirtualBox VM. Instead, it'll insist upon installing the Home Edition, and that in turn insists upon the creation of an online account. in Win 11 Pro, it offers the I don't have internet option to bypass the establishment of an internet connection. But that's been deliberately removed from the options for the Home Edition. Okay, so here's the surprise. There's a workaround. A guy named Adam, whose moniker is Warwagon, in the GRC Security Now news group, discovered that it's possible to simply close the insistent "let's connect you to the internet" dialog by hitting the Alt F4 key combination. Well, anyone who's used Windows and likes the keyboard knows that Alt F4 is the quick shortcut for killing an app. It's the same as going up into the context menu and closing close or exit or whatever. It just terminates the app. So Adam discovered that that works for this "let's connect you to the internet" dialog. Reading from, he also told the guys at NeoWin, and they wrote the following. He said, they said, however, here's where Adam's simple workaround came in handy, which is both amusing and surprising. When Windows 11 Home prompts users to connect to a network, a simple Alt F4 shortcut closes the prompt, and the screen proceeds directly to the local account creation page, something that is never offered to users in the usual process. This bypasses the entire Microsoft account login screen, which is a nifty little trick for those who want to avoid signing into their accounts during the out-of-box experience process, especially in these early days when most installs of the OS are happening on virtual machines. So actually, under a virtual machine, you do get the choice of which version you want to install. I chose Pro, but you can choose anything you want. So anyway, just a neat little tip. Oh, and those who are not fans of the new positioning and look of the Windows 11 Start menu, those you may know that it creates now. There's like the bar of items that you can click on that used to be over on the left. The shortcuts, they've now float in the middle, continually recentering themselves as new additions appear. And the Start menu is on the left, but floating with them in this group, looking very much like a Macintosh dock. There is a reg key setting, H key current user, software, Microsoft, Windows, current version, Explorer, advanced. And once you get to the advanced key, there's a whole bunch of little settings. You will see start_show classic mode, which will currently have a 0 in it. Just change it to a 1, reboot, and then you get as the name sounds, show classic mode. You get back to the menu you're used to from Windows 10.